Ever feel like your faith is pulling you in one direction while your family's needs are tugging you in another? Well, you are not alone. Today, we're exploring that delicate balance between religious devotion and your family well-being. We're going to discuss how to nurture your spirituality without sacrificing your mental health or neglecting your loved ones. Welcome back to Fulfillment Therapy, my friends, the podcast dedicated to helping parents improve their mental health, wellness, and life fulfillment. I'm your host, Kendra Nielsen, and today we're exploring a topic that's close to my heart, religiosity and its impact on well-being. So as someone who works with many faith-based clients, I've observed how certain religious attitudes can sometimes hinder rather than help our personal and family dynamics. And this is not an easy topic. It's quite charged based on your religious views. And I have learned over time from watching a lot of people and from hearing their stories what helps and what does not. And I want to share some of those stories with you today. But let's start by talking about what religiosity is, if you don't already know. Religiosity refers to this degree of devotion to religious practices and beliefs. And while faith can be the source of strength and comfort, this excessive or rigid religiosity can sometimes lead to unhealthy behaviors or attitudes. I'm sure each one of you is thinking of that person that is just very excessive, very over the top. Well, we all have certain aspects where this can show up in our lives, and I encourage you to look inward instead of just outward. I'm going to give you a few examples so you can understand what this might look like and how this shows up in several of my clients. I have a few clients that have more kids than they can comfortably care for due to what they view as religious expectations. And they think that they are less than if they have less kids. Many of the times when these people are coming to my office, it's because they have major mental health problems. And they continue to have kids regardless of that and knowing what it did for other people in the family. Now, I say this carefully because I know they had good intentions. And if we're not careful and if we're not looking inwardly at our own individual situations, we can end up harming the people we love the most because of that excessive rigidity. Another one that I see come up a lot that I didn't anticipate it being so, and I apologize for this, but this is what I'm seeing in my office. Pride that is so big when it comes to homeschooling. There are some communities out there, and I think it's beautiful in so many ways. The same with having big families. I think it's beautiful. And there is a time when it can be so excessive that it hurts people. And there are several clients that I've had over the years that are miserable. Not only are they miserable as parents, but the kids are miserable. And it's this rigid adherence to homeschooling because they see it as more pious or this next level of holiness in some ways. And yet everybody's unhappy. And they can't abandon that perspective because they have attached so much of who they are to this feeling or this belief that that is the only way, despite everybody being a mess. Another one is refusing medication due to beliefs about natural healing. And I am right there with you. I do not like pharmaceuticals. I do not like all of the side effects. And yet I have client after client coming in. Many of them are suicidal and their lives are in shambles. And yet they have this badge of honor, this mark of pride that, oh, but I don't take medication. Your family is falling apart because of this pride where you refuse to take medication and yet you're suicidal all the time. You can barely function and everyone else around you is having to pick up the pieces because of your rigidity. And that is frustrating when our pride and our religiosity is so big that we are letting it affect so many other people around us. Another one I see is overcommitting to church callings at the expense of personal and family well-being. Now, again, I know the other extreme happens a lot in congregations and wards where people are not serving at all. But then there's this other percent, that 1% that overcommits at the expense of their loved ones. And it's important to look at those people as well. Yes, that one end of the spectrum needs to step up much more, and the other end of the spectrum needs to step down much more. Because again, it's at the expense of personal and family well-being, and ultimately even faith long-term when we're giving so much to our detriment, and that creates this resentment that is hard to combat when they've been doing it for so long. Richard Feynman said this: "The first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool." Like it's very difficult to lay aside some of those rigid views if we grew up with some of those beliefs. If they're so ingrained in who we are that we don't question some of those decisions, even though they hurt us and others we love so much. Let's talk about the dangers of religious pride. So pride in our religious devotion can be this double-edged sword, and I know you've seen it in yourself and in others. So while it's natural to feel good about our faith, that excessive pride can lead to judgment of others who are making different choices, or a resistance to necessary changes or even to help, like some of those examples that I mentioned, and neglecting of personal and family needs. I want to share a quick story about this. I once worked with this mother of 5 who was completely exhausted and depressed, but refused to seek help because she believed her struggles were a test of her faith. So she got in that initial appointment because somebody had made her, but she didn't do the work and didn't keep showing up because she believed that this was all just about a test of her faith and that she could do it on her own and she didn't need these things. And it wasn't until her oldest child began showing those signs of severe anxiety and mental health struggles that she realized that her martyrdom was affecting her whole family. And then at that point, finally, she was able to start doing the work. And I'm glad that she was, but it took her a long time. So how can we develop that greater self-awareness and that balance? You can assess your motivations. Are you making choices out of genuine faith? Or, and this is what I usually see, to appear more devout to others. And I know that very quickly you'll want to defend yourself like, oh, no, that's not why. I don't care what other people think. And yet, I wonder if that's true. Like, do you want to make sure you're showing up early for church every time and you and your family are all put together because you actually do care more than you think that you do? Or having those higher callings, or I'll say some of those things in just a minute. But there are ways that we show we actually do care what other people think. Another thing you can do is consider the impact. How are your religious practices affecting your family's well-being? Be honest with yourself. Have a conversation with your kids and with your spouse. What are things we could reevaluate? And I'm not telling you here to abandon your faith, or if these things are happening, it's all lost and it's all wrong. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying maybe your perspective is what could shift. Are you dismissing valuable advice or help because it doesn't align with your religious views? And I know in every congregation, in every ward, there can be a vast variety of beliefs about the same religion, but is your religion maybe too rigid? I know our kids were very helpful as they got older in helping us see where we were too extreme, too intense, and we had to backtrack and we had to readjust and improve that because it was hardening our children's hearts. And we had to take a deep look at that and seek to repair and change that. And it has been beautiful for our faith as well as we let go of that rigidity. Queen Rania of Jordan said this: "The most powerful weapon against extremism is moderation." We don't want to be so extreme that we're missing the mark. We want to have that moderation that is wise and good and will prevent us from being deceived or led down paths that are not good for us or our family. What are some simple things we can do to counteract that excessive religiosity? You can practice flexibility in your faith. I'm going to give you an example here. So, a father learned to adapt his scripture study with his family and be more engaging in ways that are age appropriate for his kids rather than adhering to that rigid format that he grew up with, where you just read for 20 or 30 minutes and there's no dialogue and it's just reading scripture after scripture and very stale and disconnecting rather than connecting. Another thing you can do is seek diverse perspectives within your faith community. So, a couple found this renewed enthusiasm for their faith by attending interfaith discussions with other people and learning how other people interpreted similar beliefs. I know some people, this really scares them, like, oh, I can't talk to other faiths. I don't want to be shifted, or I don't want to fall for another's beliefs and lose my faith. And I completely get that on some level. And yet we don't have to be scared about talking about our commonalities or even our differences. We can just have that open dialogue that can be very beautiful. Another thing you can do is prioritize mental and emotional health. So a mom that I work with realized that taking antidepressants didn't diminish her faith, but allowed her to be more present and loving with her family. She recognizes she can be so much less depressed and anxious so that she can be a better parent. That, for her right now, means taking pharmaceuticals, and that's okay. Another thing you can do is set boundaries on religious commitments. Another example of this is a family implemented something I thought was interesting called one calling per parent rule. And that made sure they had enough time for each other and their personal pursuits as well. It's also important to know that this type of rigid thinking doesn't have to just be limited to religious contexts. I see this in a lot of clients in other ways, like career-oriented people who sacrifice family time for professional advancement, or even those who pride themselves on logic or their academic achievements at the expense of emotional intelligence, or people who wear their busy schedules as this badge of honor and neglect self-care and relationships. I've seen pride manifest in lots of different ways, and we are specifically talking about religiosity here, but we all have different ways where we are very rigid in our thinking that we could adjust. So maybe it's not religion specifically for you, but how are you rigid in ways that are harmful to you or your family? Thomas Merton said, "Pride makes us artificial and humility makes us real." So we can't show up as real and relatable and have those deep connections if we are stuck in that rigidity and in that pride. All right, just a few quick recaps from today. That excessive religiosity can sometimes hinder personal growth and that family well-being. But the key to healing is self-awareness to maintain that healthy relationship with our faith, with our family, with ourselves. And balance and flexibility in religious practices. And when we can achieve that balance and that flexibility in our faith, that leads to greater fulfillment overall and that deeper connection with our family. My friends, the goal here is not to abandon your faith or your values. I hope you did not get that message here. But it's to approach our faith in a way that will enhance our lives and the lives of the people we care about. When we are aware of those pitfalls and that excessive religiosity, and then work to counteract that, we can find that more authentic and balanced life, that greater fulfillment. And I know from experience of working with these clients, working through these things, that when we lean into that, when we challenge some of those notions and those ways of living that no longer serve us, we will have greater joy. And I know that you can have that for yourself as well. All right, my friends, if you feel like this would benefit anyone else that you know and care about, please share this episode. And if you haven't done so already, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, preferably, or anything if you can, because that helps us get seen and help more people. So please take the time to do that. And if you have, thank you so much for taking those 2 minutes to do that. Don't forget to check out our courses on our website, All of those links are in the show notes if you want to find us on Facebook, on Instagram, any of those things. It's all below, so check it out in the show notes. Thanks for showing up, my friends. I'll see you back here on Mondays and Thursdays with a new episode. Hey friends, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, chances are someone else would too. Would you take 30 seconds to share this with a friend who's looking for greater family fulfillment? And while you're sharing, tell me what you think about the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. It refuels me when I hear this podcast is helping you, no matter what your house or your hair looks like. I'll meet you back here every Monday and Thursday morning for more episodes. Until then.